Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of Warthog Wednesdays. It's episode 7. Happy after Christmas for you. Hope you had a great Christmas with all your loved ones. I had a good day and ready for a new year coming up. 2024 is going to be a great one, and looking for big things this next year. So finally, we're on live. And we're going to talk about the last air-to-air gun kill in the history of air combat. As far as I know, there may have been something in Ukraine. We don't know. Um, I'm not sure we're counting drones. There's some drone kills. There's been some drone kills in in the area of Israel as well. But and also some TLAM missiles. Some really cool video. They're not gun kills. Some really cool video of Israeli Defense Force, Israeli Air Force F-35, um, and I think now F-15s as well. Actually destroying cruise missiles coming in from the Houthis in Yemen towards Israel. So pretty awesome stuff. I mean, you're talking about tracking a very low altitude, very high speed, a very small target. You can talk down and being able to track that thing in ground clutter and still with the missiles. Pretty amazing technology. So I was seeing that, but I don't know. Yeah, pretty good hunch that maybe my kill. 15 February 1991, just a few years ago, was still the last day there gun kill in the history of air combat. So we'll talk about that today. Um, if I'm famous for anything, it's that, and so it's kind of it's a cool event. Not a really particular strategic huge target in the history of things, but it's kind of a big deal when another aircraft is shot down from shot. In Desert Storm, there were 36 air-to-air kills, 34 of them with missiles. Um, and 2 of them were with guns, and of course, they both went by the mighty A-10. Um, and the first one was an observation helicopter, and Bob Swain, Captain Bob Swain, was flying that day. He retired as 1-star general, and he was the Air National Guard. But and Bob's airplane called Chopper Popper is on display at the Air Force Academy where he's a graduate of. On a pole there, you see, so it's cool. But interesting enough, Bob flying with the 706 Cajuns, the reserve squad out of New Orleans. Bob was actually flying the only jet in the livery that did not have a DPR recorder working. So we had no gun camera film of the shoot down, which is a little bit sad. But I do have gun camera film of my shoot down. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. But it's on a VCR tape that I have, and I need to get that thing converted over to digital. And when I do, we'll put it up for our membership subscribers. That's how I have to get some clearance from the airport. I don't know. I probably won't ask questions. It's one of those don't ask the question if you can't say the answer kind of thing. So, there's nothing classified in that head as it's right now. And actually, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read actually they tell a story, and this could be an interview that's kind of static here to go to this topic story. Not somebody reaction in front of you, but I wrote an article for a book called Debrief. Debrief is a book put together by a friend of mine, Dr. Broom. He was an F-111 pilot, and he decided after he got out of the Air Force to compile all the air-to-air kills from Vietnam to Desert Storm. There's a lot of history, of course, on some of the Vietnam kills, not all of them, and there was tremendous history on World War II. It's been well written about, but he then decided to write a book and capture the first-person account. So he reached out to all the guys who had air kill in Vietnam that were still alive, all the way through Desert Storm, and for the most part got first-person accounts. Photographs is a great book called Debrief. You can find it out on the bookstores. But really cool effort that he put together. So he reached out to me, of course, and he had me write a first-person account. And I'm kind of proud of this. He didn't do any editing to it. He didn't have to edit it, but his editor didn't touch it. It's exactly as I wrote it. I will say though that in this narrative, I will be changing this in the book 2 days forthcoming in the spring, as you know. But in that book, there'll be a few more accuracies. In this particular article, because it was still pretty fresh, the kill had been confirmed, of course. I don't even think I've been awarded the DFC yet for the kill. I happened to put Air Force Base a year later, my next assignment. But But there's one detail in the story, in his book, it's not accurate. I wrote it that way because I had been clearance to write the other way. Um, and I'll talk about it now to interrupt the story. But um, I'm going to talk setting up the day here is 3 days earlier. I've been my gun had malfunctioned. I've been actually hit. I've been hit by 37 millimeter. You believe up underneath the nose. Was leading a 3 ship about 100 miles into Iraq. Was flying out of the port after the location of Juice, Western Saudi Arabia, which is where I was flying the day I had killed. And so it's ever fit. I've just rolled in. I'm about to do a high angle strafe on tank at 60 degrees of dive, and the airplane shuddered a little bit. The master caution light lit up and said gun unsafe. The gun stopped firing because I just pulled the trigger. Gun stopped firing, and that has never happened. The gun is tremendously reliable. Very few instances ever of the gun malfunctioning in terms of the JM or any kind of thing with the feeding system or the barrels. Very, very reliable weapon. And I've never seen that light before. What that light means is that the gun is not going to complete its clearing and cooling cycle. So after stop pulling the trigger, the supposed to stop firing, and then the gun is going to periodically rotate backwards to take the unspent rounds. It's a 7-barrel Gatling gun. It takes the rounds that have not shot out of the gun, back them up, back into the helix, so it's going to have 5 rounds in the chambers. And then it's also going to complete a cooling cycle. So just periodically, it's going to just each kind of go chunk, chunk, and the gun's just rotating backwards a little bit so that the ram air coming into the nose of the aircraft cools the barrels, will cool them evenly so they don't work. So the gun on safe rate means none of that's going to happen. So you've got hot rounds, potentially rounds in the chamber, you can fire off potentially. So you got to not point at anybody. And when you land at most photo bases, it's a hot gun area, you're going to actually park the airplane, straight into a berm or something, off the far to the airport, you're going to come and pick you up. And then the weapons guys can out and steal that gun, but there's no such thing as to point out the guns are out the end of the gun or somewhere. But so I've been all I knew was the gun was unsafe. I felt a jolt. There's no other systems problems with the airplane. Of course, I'll knock it off. The flight, the problem had south. Had Saudi Arabia. South and a bad guys there to figure it out. And so the flight, we headed out south. And once we got over Saudi airspace, and then the crew come in and look me over real closely. We'd always see the battle damage check anyway. Looking over each airplane to kind of fly just one side, the other side underneath, and then go over the top. And we start looking at the airplane over the guys the airplane to make sure that there's nothing hanging or panels or fluid leaking or whatever during the holes in the airplane. So I had my number 2 Sparky take a look at me. So we didn't see anything tremendously unusual at all. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's just this is done on safe flight. Maybe it wasn't hit. But there was this jolt of the airplane, and so it was concerned, and I'm checking over all my instruments, of course, to see after the recovery home, after well, and I did have the left engine running a little bit hot, surging just a little bit, but I put power back a little bit on it. It seemed okay. It wasn't over temping, and it didn't feel rough running, but so I recovered. You don't do normal with the ship hot overhead. You kind of ramp down as fast as you can, coming down initial and pitch out, and then come on the land. So but you have to actually get down initial. But I didn't do that, and I landed first and then pulled off to the end and then left the right there behind me and taxied normally. But so they came down and checked over the airplane, and so I signed off the forms that we signed. It was a binder and it was the maintenance forms, and I signed that off. And no any problems with the airplane. So I know the gun on safe side, of course, and noted the engine indications that they should be running normally within normal limits. And so I'm just, you guys got a truck take me back, and I'm having so truck species. Hey, sir, yeah, is there any problem with the engine besides? I said no. I don't think you read the form. I said no. I wrote it down. And I did have a little bit of hot temp, but nothing. He said, yeah, I'll take one here. And every fan blade in the big turbo fan engine and left side had a big quarter-size chunk out of it. There were holes in the bottom of the cowling, side of the cowling of the engine, and then he shows up into the nose where he tried to put the pin in to safely the gun. And if you open that panel, parts fell out as the gun. And then the left side of the fuselage, so just below the cockpit, were a couple of holes as well. And so it appeared like, and then underneath the nose, so it appeared like I got hit by 37 millimeter shrapnel. I say 37 millimeter because I didn't see the big dark centered clouds, like 57 millimeter, or the little popcorn of 23 millimeter. And we were about the altitude regime where 37 millimeter would be affected. So apparently I'd been hit under the nose. We chewed up the gun gears, spit them out the left side of the fuselage, stuck them down the left engine. I think it's pretty cool. They had to split the, I mean, really split this. They said they did bore scope the engine and determined that that it was actually injected metal down the hot section engine as well as the bypass section. The engine was trashed, it gave me out and replaced it. But still almost a gun that's pinned up because they the combat for the airplane anymore. And so I had another 3 days out of LG at that point. And so I'll talk about that and how that changed the story here in that minute. So in the story, I just mentioned that I had a gun malfunction because yeah, I don't think there's been an investigation yet, or I haven't seen it. The channels to see what I could say, and we just went with the public affairs. And said, it's still a gun malfunction to see with that. Um, so that's what we did. But in reality, those reports I got later from the CBS guys that indicated that I've been helping the international secretary. But so that's what we're going to do here today. Is just I'm going to read this story. Hopefully, I won't conversate too much. It's called "Victory at New Caib." Is what I call it, because New Caib is the little village that just past that village, they have their so we'll go through that and hope you enjoy it. And again, what I'll do later is I'll edit this video to include just on my face, but also I'll place some pictures of some things. There's a really cool picture, for instance, of me and Sparky shaking hands, and he came up to greet me as I landed. Because by that time, we really got back to so that he's out there. Well, Sparky, I flew back home that day, June 5, so stuff like that, yeah. Put on my old man glasses here, and so, Shanghai story time coming up. As the first few rays of sunlight crept into the room, I lay on my cot staring at the ceiling, frustrated, unable to sleep. It was Friday, 15 February 1991, the final day of my stint at Al Juth Airfield, Saudi Arabia. During the previous 5 days, the weather had been good, the targets plentiful, and the defenses relatively light. With 8 A-10s forward deployed from King Fahd International Airport, home to the 144. Yeah, I'm getting muffled. Going by, just a little look at the comments here, and everybody's saying a muffled audio. And somebody's getting also a little also a little bit of it. Say what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna reboot this. Be right back.
Okay, hey, we're back for another episode of What Could Go Wrong Wednesdays. So not only did I have to reboot the system, so let's see. Tell me in the chat if it's got better. Um, let's see here. Open this up. Yeah, okay. I'm looking at it on my phone. It seems to be better. Uh, so anyway, rebooted the system, and then my light, my ring light, for some reason went out as well. And so it looks like and so I don't know why I changed out the cord and I changed out the plug, but it's still not working. So I rigged up I mean, it's really rigged up. This thing is really bright too. This other lights here, so I may attenuate this down a little bit. But anyway, this is some quality production in the kids. So we're just all about it. Hey, but tomorrow, this is good news. Tomorrow, I'm having lunch with my son, the lawyer from Houston, and uh, we're going to go out and his Christmas gift. He's going to give me some new technology. So we should have a whole new studio set up by next week. So that's very exciting. Let's see. Yep, 5x5 says Zenith, and Ken's saying the audio is good. So right on, good. I did notice a funny comment here. Dale's a retired Air Force guy, engine tech. He says, let's just put it up on the screen here. I like this one. Middle Georgia here. I can troubleshoot a jet engine malfunction, but no clue with this computer audio visual stuff. Yeah, I can shoot down a helicopter, but can't get this thing going for anything. So, but we're learning. So appreciate everybody their support. You know, I've gotten some really great, some just super awesome positive comments and encouragement from people. I really appreciate that. I'm going to give a shout out right now to a couple of people. Um, Vicky Hauser. Vicky's just the best person. Vicky is just a wonderful human being. I'm looking forward to meeting her one day. She's been so supportive of the Phoenix House and this program and myself. Become Facebook friends, and she's a guitarist. She's a really talented person. And she's a super awesome person, and I really appreciate Vicky. So I see she's here. Good, hi Vicky, and I got to give a shout out to Scott Atwood, of course. Scott was our second guest on the program, and also becoming a great friend. And I missed the opportunity last week to go out and see his jet. He's here in Oklahoma City, but he'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll have dinner and get together. So anyway, all right, so back to the program. So as I was saying earlier, it's just in a muffled voice, bad audio, and choppy video. That I'm going to read an account of the shoot down of the helicopter. It's called "Victory at New Kai," and I did look up too. I was rebooting the system. I looked up here that the book called Debrief. I'll put this link in the description, but book called Debrief right there. Let's see if we get right there. Debrief by Brown is available. This is Amazon, $49.95, free shipping. There you go. Good. It's an awesome book. Big, huge books, like a coffee table book. A lot of pictures, firsthand accounts of air kills from. This is called The Complete History of U.S. Aerial Engagements in 1981 to the present. So pretty cool. So I think I said Vietnam, and I was wrong. It's post-Vietnam stuff. So really pretty neat stuff. And the old Shanghai's in there. So here's the article or the chapter that I wrote for the book Debrief. It's called Victory at New Kai. As the first few rays of sunlight crept into the room, I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling, frustrated and unable to sleep. It was Friday, 15 February 1991, the final day of my stint at Al Juf Airfield, Saudi Arabia. During the previous 5 days, the weather had been good, the targets plentiful, and the defenses relatively light. With 8 A-10s forward deployed from King Fahd International Airport, home to the 144 Warthogs of the 354th Fighter Wing Provisional, we were successfully deterring these Iraqis from launching Scud missiles towards Israel, as well as pounding a wide variety of other targets, notably radar sites, airfields, and ammunition storage facilities. Although not fun by any stretch of the imagination, it had been a pretty good week of combat flying, and I found myself strangely sorry it was coming to an end. I was doubly frustrated by the fact that, except for ferrying a broken airplane back to King Fahd, I was not on the day's flying schedule. 3 days before, while strafing an artillery site in southwest Iraq, some of my 30mm ammunition had prematurely exploded inside the barrels, severely damaging the gun and my left engine. The aircraft flew home like a champ, with even the left engine running fairly smoothly, but the gun was damaged beyond ability to repair it at the austere forward operating location. Let's see, let me get back my place here. Yeah. Even though the engine had been replaced, the inability to use the gun prevented the aircraft from being flown into combat. This is, I think there we go. Sorry. and as such, a wrench was thrown into the daily flying schedule. I personally wasn't affected too much because as an experienced flight lead, I was able to fit into any scheduled position and on any mission. I had flown at least one combat mission each day since then and was disappointed that I wasn't going north that day. It wasn't that I was enjoying getting shot at, nor that I received any great high from risking my life flying combat. But part of a fighter pilot's nature won't let him be content with sitting on the sidelines while others do the job he's been trained to do. The guy who had really gotten the short end of the stick was my combat pair and fellow 511 Fighter Squadron Vulture, Captain Scott Sparky Johnston. Sparky wasn't qualified to lead formations yet, so he wasn't as easy to fit into the schedule as I was. Consequently, he had only flown once in the last 3 days, and like me, except for our trip back to FOD, he wasn't flying today either. Apparently, Sparky had come to grips with his frustration because he was sound asleep on the cot next to mine. The two other pilots who shared our small room, Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Alexander and Captain Jim Calloway, both 706 Fighter Squadron Cajuns, had been up for over an hour now and were undoubtedly already briefing to fly their combat missions. As I lay there wrestling with these thoughts and emotions, I tried to console myself with the fact that I had made a contribution already, and since no immediate end to the fighting was in sight, I would like to get several more opportunities to help free Kuwait. Additionally, I reasoned, there were certainly fighter pilots all over the world more frustrated than I, namely those who didn't get to participate at all and those who had been shot down and were starting another day as prisoners of war. I was suddenly startled out of my restless self-pity by the imposing form of Lieutenant Colonel Seth Growth Wilson as he burst through the door. Growth was also a Cajun, a reservist who had flown fighters for around 20 years, including many combat missions as a forward air controller in Southeast Asia. Like me, he was happy to be in the fray. He was a great fighter pilot, a super nice guy, and the operations officer for the forward application. I get a little emotional talking about Growth because Growth was passed on. He was a just a great dude. And his call sign, he had his call sign honestly too. Big guy, he had a huge head and a huge bald head, and he was just he was just a beast of a guy, very imposing, uh, just physically, but he's the nicest guy you'd want to meet. Super awesome guy. And he's the guy that taught us. I think I've recounted this before. He taught us what it looked like when you're getting shot at. So, we know how high the 37 millimeter go, for instance, but what does it look like when it's coming up at you and bursting all around you? And Growth gives a briefing on that with a chalkboard and drawing little pictures. 23 millimeter looks like popcorn, so it's cool. That was good information for sure. So anyway, his Growth coming through the door. Shanghai, let's go. You're flying 2 sorties this morning before you leave for FOD, he said. I thought I wasn't on the schedule, sir, I retorted a bit defensively, thinking he sounded as if I were late for a scheduled briefing. You weren't, but Colonel Efferson can't fly today, so you're his replacement. You're leading a 2-ship. Briefing's in 15 minutes. I'll give you a ride over to Intel if you hurry up and get ready, he continued. I certainly didn't have to be asked twice. I jumped off the cot, grabbed my towel and shaving bag, and hurried to the shower room. As I sprinted out the room, I called over my shoulder, shit hot, I'll be ready in 10 minutes. Exactly 10 minutes later, I had shaved, showered, and dressed in my flight suit and boots. With map bag and ever-present gas mask in hand, I headed down the hall toward the small room where we kept our helmets, harnesses, and anti-G suits. Quickly grabbing all this equipment, I awkwardly made my way to the front door of the small dormitory building originally built for the workmen who maintained the airport facilities, now home to some 20 U.S. fighter pilots. Growth met me in the hallway and relieved some of my burden. Looks like a great day for combat, he mused as we walked out into the sunny morning. Yep, sure does, I cheerfully replied. We drove across the base quickly, and I soon found myself immersed in pre-flight planning and briefing. My wingman for the missions was to be First Lieutenant Jay Keller of the 76th Fighter Squadron. The intelligence officer told us of recent activity and briefed us on our targets. We were to search for and destroy any Scud missiles or associated equipment within the area. Just to make sure we're still good. We are great equipment. We're to we were to search for and destroy any Scud missiles or associated equipment in an area known as Scud Alley. In the event we had ordnance left after our search, we were to expend it on Home Depot, a huge ammunition storage facility in the Scud Alley area, or on a mechanized infantry regiment, which I had found 2 days earlier, dug in near the Nukaib Sector Operations Center complex in an area we called East TAC. In addition to target and threat information, we reviewed search and rescue and escape and evasion procedures and memorized the daily code words. During the intel briefing, Jay mentioned that the previous day, he and his flight lead had found 4 Su-7 Fitter fighter jets parked in a makeshift sand revetment about 2 miles north of the Mudiasis airfield. He indicated that they had destroyed 3 of them, but for sure one of them was still intact. The intelligence officer and Growth both agreed that any remaining fighters would be priority targets, so this became our priority target should we find no activity in Scud Alley. Next, we spent about 15 minutes copying target details on our maps, such as our call sign and mission number for the day, Springfield 27, and our mission number 5127. Because Jay and I were from different squadrons and had never flown together, I spent the next 15 to 20 minutes briefing him on my tactics, what I expected of him as my wingman, what he could expect of me as his leader. Satisfied that we were ready to function as a fighting team, I ended the formal briefing so that we could take care of any last minute personal business before we rode out to our jets. For me, that meant something to eat, so I rummaged through a couple of cardboard boxes full of MREs until I found one that sounded palatable for breakfast. The thick, room temperature beef stew mixture was actually fairly tasty, all things considered, and washing it down with a few spoonfuls or washing it down a few spoonfuls with some water, I was ready to go. I did not mention in the article because back then I was just shit hot fighter pilot. Now I'm a little more humble, I think. And every mission I flew 40 and 40 times. I would dry heave. I would when I get all my stuff together. It wasn't because of the meal. It was because I was just nervous. I was just nervous that I didn't want to get my wingmen killed. Didn't want to get me killed. Didn't want to screw up. Didn't want to get friendlies killed. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's just those you're really busy briefing and planning but you get ready to go, and there's just usually some minutes there where a few minutes you're waiting for the van or whatever to take you out to the jets, and it's just time when then sort of the trepidation can kind of creep in. And I just nervous, and I just go dry heave. Get some good ab muscles during those missions, and so I didn't put that in the article. Yeah, tell you, tell my friends here, but so I was ready to go. Jay and I donned our flying gear and caught a ride to the flight line with the maintenance supervisor. My crew chief greeted me at A10 serial number 810964 with a salute, and I exchanged my gas mask, map, and helmet bags for the aircraft forms he held out to me. "How's the jet, Chief?" I asked. "Ready to go get him, sir," he replied. "Outstanding," I said as I scurried up the ladder to place my gear in the cockpit. Carefully, I performed my pre-flight walk-around, paying particular attention to the 6 CBU-58 cluster bombs, 2 AGM-65 Delta infrared Maverick missiles, and 2 AIM-9 Mike air-to-air heat-seeking missiles located under the wings. As was typical, the bombs had a variety of names and short messages scribbled onto them by the weapons loaders. In accordance with my habit, I removed the greased pencil from the pencil pocket on my left sleeve and added a message of my own to the side of the CBUs. On that day, I chose to acknowledge my departure from Al Juf with "Adios, Western Iraq. It's been no fun." Satisfied that everything was ready to go, I climbed up the ladder, took a long look at the top back of the Warthog, and settled into the ejection seat and began strapping in. The crew chief climbed back up the ladder to help me with the shoulder harnesses, then climbed back down, donned his headset, and checked in with me on the hot microphone. "How do you read me, sir?" "Loud and clear," I replied. "How me?" "Loud and clear also." "Okay, let's start her up, Chief," I said. I quickly started the auxiliary power unit and both engines, then set up the myriad of cockpit switches, aligned and loaded waypoints into the inertial navigation system, and checked out the video of my Maverick missiles. 15 minutes later, at the prearranged time, I checked Jay in on the 3 radios, and we taxied towards the runway. Just prior to the end, we stopped short while the weapons personnel pulled all the ground safety pins from the weapons and took one last look over the aircraft to ensure it was ready to go. With a thumbs up from the chief of the weapons crew, I was ready for combat. A quick call to the control tower, and we were cleared for takeoff. I taxied onto the runway with Jay pulling up alongside on my right side. As I looked over at him, he gave a big head nod, indicating that he was ready to run up the engines. I raised the index and middle fingers of my right hand and made a twirling motion, the signal to run up both engines. I then advanced my throttles until the twin RPM gauges read 90%, checked over all the engine instruments, and took one last look around the cockpit to ensure all the switches were set correctly. This done, I looked over at Jay again and noted another big head nod, which indicated he was ready for takeoff. I saluted him sharply, released my brakes, and pushed the throttles forward towards the stops. Slowly at first, then faster and faster, I hurled down the runway, wrapped in 45,000 pounds of steel and explosives. Passing 145 knots of airspeed, I gently pulled back on the control stick, and my craft lumbered skyward. Immediately, I reached for the wheel-shaped landing gear handle and lifted it to retract the gear. I then retracted the flaps from their takeoff position and pulled the throttles back to 93% in order to give Jay a power advantage so he could catch me in the climb. He released brakes 20 seconds after me, and as I looked over my left shoulder, I saw him just lifting off the runway behind me. Within a couple of minutes, Jay slid into position on the left about a mile out and slightly aft. I then directed a channel change to Airborne Warning and Control Systems Aircraft, or AWACS, frequency. "Springfield, go Amber 6. 2, Jay replied. Switching over to the UHF radio that corresponded to the code words Amber 6, I checked in with the air weapons controller aboard AWACS, whose call sign was Cougar. "Springfield, check. 2, Jay replied. "Cougar, Springfield 27, mission 5127 Alpha, I transmitted. Springfield, Cougar, radar contact. Picture clean, the controller replied, indicating he had me on his radar scope and there were no air threats. Cougar, Springfield, Sweet Sour, I added, indicating I wanted a check of my identification friend or foe, IFF systems. Springfield's Sweet All Modes was the reply, telling me that I was registering as a friendly aircraft to all his sensors. After this short banter, I armed up my chaff and flare systems for an in-flight check and directed Jay to do the same. Springfield, standby chaff flare check, I transmitted over the radio. 2. I then gave Jay a few seconds to arm his chaff and flares before I punched the chaff and flare buttons on the throttles 3 times in quick succession. As I did this, I could see the small chaff cloud billow from under my left wingtip because the flares ejected from under the wings out of sight behind the aircraft. I relied on Jay to tell me the flares were indeed coming out. 2's got 3 flares, he transmitted as he punched his buttons, the pre-brief 3 times. 1's got 3 also, I replied. Hook left, 1's heads down bore sight. I then quickly added, directing a 180-degree left turn so I would be behind him and could set my Maverick missile seeker heads to look where I wanted them when I called them up. Jay had already done this check during the rejoin after takeoff. As I called up the missile on station number 3 under my left wing and looked at the cockpit video screen, I slewed the seeker head around until I found the white-hot outlines of Jay's aircraft engines. I then commanded the missile to lock onto him and put, by the way, the missile is safe. It's not armed at this point. I then commanded the missile to lock onto him and put the missile into the automatic mode with a flick of the switch on the left throttle. Next, I dialed 150 mils of depression onto the pipper on the heads-up display and flew it over Jay's aircraft with a push of the missile's track button on the control stick. The missile seeker head now was trained to initially look at 150 mils of depression. This done, I deselected the missile, called up the one on station 9 on the right wing, and repeated the procedure. With this check done, I put the flight back around to the north, and we had only to level off at 20,000 feet and travel another 50 miles, and we would be crossing the border into Iraq. As we cruised along at 20,000 feet, I split my attention between keeping a good lookout for other aircraft, keeping an eye on Jay, and cross-checking the steering cues to the target area on the heads-up display with my map and a few ground references on the otherwise featureless desert. I also took the time to title my videotape. The aircraft was equipped with a videotape recorder, or VTR, that could record the HUD display or the Maverick missile screen. I turned on the recorder to HUD, pulled up the intercom switches, and through the hot mic recorded my name, the date, and mission number. About 20 miles from the border, AWACS alerted me to the presence of the Border Combat Air Control, or CAP, ahead and above me. Springfield, 2 friendlies, 340 for 10. Springfield's looking no joy, say angels, I replied, indicating that I did not see them and wanted to know what altitude they were at. Springfield, friendlies are at base plus 13. Since the day's base altitude was 12, that put them 5,000 feet above me at 25,000 feet. They were obviously searching for me now, too, as my radar warning receiver indicated friendly air-to-air radar at my 12 o'clock. After a couple more seconds of scanning the sky ahead and above, I saw 2 F-15 Eagles traveling in a wide line abreast formation about 5 miles away. 1's got 2 Eagles off the nose, 20 high, 5 miles, I informed Jay. 2's tally ho, he replied, telling me that he saw them too. Cougar, Springfield's tally ho, I transmitted. Roger, Springfield, was the reply. Comforted by the presence of the Eagles, we rocked our wings to say hello and pressed on north towards Scud Alley. Approaching the border, I directed Jay to fence in, which entailed, among other things, turning off the external lights and some of the IFF modes, and turning on the electronic countermeasures ECM jamming pod. Also, we crossed the fence into the bad guy territory. I began flying a less predictable flight path, which, although harder for Jay to follow, made it even more difficult for the enemy's anti-aircraft artillery gunners. We had over 50 miles to fly to the southern part of the Scud Alley, and although the defenses in this vast open part of the southwestern area of Iraq were light compared to those closer to the population centers, there was always the possibility of AAA and shoulder-fired heat-seeking missiles. Upon reaching Scud Alley, I descended to approximately 15,000 feet and began a methodical surge pattern starting at the southwest end of our assigned sector and working our way east and north. We were mainly looking for any signs of movement, and particularly the large vehicles associated with Scud activity. Jay was primarily clearing for their aircraft and looking for threats coming up as I concentrated on looking for the targets. Occasionally, when I thought I saw something of interest, I would pull out my binoculars on the map being secured on top of the glare shield in front of me and take a closer look. Unfortunately, after about 20 minutes of searching, we didn't find any activity, so I decided to head down to Madias's and check out Jay's fitters. I turned south and toggled the INS steering point that I had loaded for the airfield's coordinates into the cues. The HUD showed 20 miles to the airfield as I climbed back up to 20,000 feet. Less than 5 minutes later, as we approached the airfield, I checked Jay's fuel and directed him to prepare to drop the CBU. Springfield, fence-in bombs, ops check, 1's 7.1. 2's 6.9, Jay replied, indicating 6,900 pounds of fuel remaining. Looking ahead, I could see the buildings, hangars, and revetments of a once busy fighter base. Now it appeared deserted, and it was visibly cratered after numerous coalition airstrikes. The fighters we were looking for were, according to Jay, about a mile from the airfield perimeter. They had apparently been towed north along the only paved road leading to the base in an effort to spare them from the first attacks. As we got closer to the airfield, I was able to make out 4 widely spaced earthen revetments. A quick radio call to Jay confirmed that between those walls of sand was where the fighters were parked. Jay also indicated that the previous day they had only seen 4, and after a few passes, 3 of them had exploded and burned. They had left without destroying the one closest to the airfield due to heavy anti-aircraft artillery fire coming from the base. As these thoughts quickly passed through my mind, I looked again around the deserted-looking airfield and found it hard to believe that there were actually people down there who, as soon as they discovered my presence, were going to try to kill me. With these thoughts in mind, I called to Jay that we were going to set up an orbit at our present position about 2 miles from the target revetment, Springfield Circle 2. With a slight displacement of the control stick to the left, a little back pressure, and a couple clicks of back trim, I put the Warthog into a gentle left turn and started to fly a sideways roller coaster pattern across the sky, still varying my altitude at unpredictable intervals. 1 will be in 30 seconds, rippling 6, I informed Jay. 2's cover, he replied. As I descended to 15,000 feet to start my bombing pass, I flipped on the VTR and visually scanned the weapons panel to be certain I had the switches set correctly and the green ready lights on the 6 selected stations were illuminated. Without really thinking about it, I also made a mental note to debrief Jay on the 2's cover call. I thought it was an unnecessary radio call. Of course he's covering me. What else would he be doing, I thought? So there's a difference between squadrons. In their squadron, the 76 was out of England Air Force Base, Louisiana. I was later part of the 75th squadron. It's all part of the 23rd Wing, the Flying Tigers. And in that wing, at least that squadron, they 2 would say his cover when one was in, and we didn't do that in Vultures. we believed in radio brevity. 2 could say 2, which he says a lot, obviously. He could say Mayday if he had a problem. He could say that I was on fire. 2, Mayday, lead, you're on fire. That's all you could say. You could say bingo. If his fuel sick got to bingo where we got to go home, you could say that as well. That's kind of what we used to say to wingman. You could say 2, bingo, Mayday, leads on fire. Otherwise, shut up. So it's interesting. In the middle of combat, you think of these things. Flight lead, I was getting ready to upgrade to instructor pilot, and you think yeah, just debrief him on that. Of course he's covering me. This is funny. It's funny the thoughts that go through your mind in the middle of combat or any other time. With the target revetment barely visible over the left canopy rail, I rolled my aircraft over onto its back and pulled down towards it. As my aircraft's nose reached the target, I abruptly rolled out of the turn to place the target near the top of my heads-up display. Checking my dive angle at 45 degrees, I consciously allowed the bombing pipper to track forward to the target as my altimeter unwound and my airspeed increased rapidly. Approaching 10,000 feet, I could make out the outline of the Su-7 fighter aircraft in the middle. As the pipper reached the target, instinctively my right thumb mashed down on the red bomb release button atop the control stick. We call it the pickle button. As the pipper reached the target, instinctively, I already said it, I could feel each of the 6 bombs released in sequence, and the aircraft became noticeably more responsive as it was released to the burden of over 3,000 pounds of bombs. Still holding the pickle button down, I immediately began a 4G pull back towards the horizon as the airspeed continued to build above 450 knots. My anti-G suit filled with high-pressure air as I strained all the muscles of my lower body to fight against the forces of gravity which were trying to rob my eyes and brain of much-needed blood. At the same time, I began punching the chaff and flare buttons on the throttles in rapid succession. With the nose of my aircraft at 20 degrees above the horizon, I relaxed the back pressure on the stick to about 2 Gs and let the nose zoom to 30 degrees. This maneuver ensured safe separation from the blast of my bombs and allowed me to trade my excess airspeed for altitude, which meant distance from any AAA gunners. As I continued climbing upward, I started maneuvering from side to side to further confuse the gunners, and I pushed forward on the stick to lower the nose before I got too slow. Simultaneously, I began looking above for Jay. Finding him high and to the left, I started a right-hand turn to counter his flight path and keep him in sight. I then glanced inside my turn to see my cluster bombs spread over the area of the revetment. Not a bad pass, I thought. A little short, but the last couple of cans definitely got there. I expected to see an immediate explosion, as from my vantage point, it appeared quite a few bomblets hit the aircraft. So I was surprised that except for some dust flying around, nothing was happening in the revetment. Disappointed, I climbed back to above 15,000 feet and cleared JM. 2, you're cleared in. I thought I got good hits, but it still looks intact. Roger that. I thought you had it for sure. I'll give it a try. Copy Ripple 6. The gunners are starting up. I added as I noted a few white puffs dotting the sky between our position and the airfield. 2 doesn't have the airburst, Jay replied somewhat apprehensively. Roger, it's 23 millimeter, well out of range. I'll keep an eye on it. 2 copies. From my high vantage point, I watched both Jay and the now growing airburst. While Jay maneuvered to his roll-in point, I briefly pulled the small binoculars from my map bag, fixed my gaze at the airfield perimeter, and put the binoculars to my eyes. As I adjusted the focus out, the scene came into clear view. But as I scanned around, I couldn't make out any muzzle flashes, which would give away the firing positions. Probably invisible in the bright sun, I thought, as I stowed the binoculars and once again scanned the sky around between Jay and the target. I watched as he rolled in, pickled off his 6 CBU canisters, and pulled off much as I just had. I saw the canisters open and a small puff of smoke, and I saw the overlapping donut-shaped pattern that they made in and around the target area. His was also a pretty good pass, with seemingly a lot of bomblets finding the revetment. As Jay climbed back up to altitude, though, there was still no explosion, no fire, nothing but dust. The 23 millimeter gunners tried to follow Jay's climb, but his unpredictable flight path kept him out of range. Growing increasingly frustrated, I decided upon one more pass, this time with the gun. I didn't want to make too many passes, as with each pass, the AAA gunners tend to get better at figuring out what you will do next. But I also didn't want to give up on this stubborn target without at least one gun pass. Conveying my intentions to Jay, I again descended and rolled into a steep dive at the target. This time I concentrated on the black plus sign symbology on the HUD that we called the gun cross. Taking aim slightly upward, I stabilized the aircraft, and with the altimeter rapidly approaching 10,000 feet, I squeezed the trigger. The familiar roar and smell of the gun instantly filled the cockpit as a mixture of armor-piercing and high-explosive shells was hurled at the target at the rate of 70 per second. After approximately 2 seconds, I released the trigger, and without waiting to see the results of my strafing run, I started my jinking recovery back to altitude. Jay's voice told me all I needed to know as I climbed. Springfield, keep it coming left. AAA was his excited retort. Copy. Did you see the bullets hit? Affirm. Look mostly right, maybe a few hits. This target doesn't want to die. Roger. Guess we've worn out our welcome. Better go home now, I said, as I noted my gas reading 5,500 pounds, only about 1,000 above our planned bingo fuel for returning to Algiers. 2 copies. Guess it has 9 lives, Jay added. Roger that, I replied disgustedly. I figured that we had pushed our luck enough on that target, and with those particular 23 millimeter gunners, I wanted to check out the Nukaib area and see how the effort against the mechanized infantry regiment was going. I discovered it 2 days earlier and had been on every mission against it since that time. So it was sort of my target, and I hoped to knock out a few more tanks before we bingoed out and had to return to base. Nukaib was only about 20 miles from Mudiasis. It was generally along the route back to Al Juf, so I headed my flight towards it, got another ops check-in with Jay, and directed him to get ready to shoot Mavericks. As we approached over East Tack, Marlin, another flight of A-10s, was just bingoing out after destroying 4 vetted tanks with Mavericks and damaging 2 others with the gun. I got a quick point out to the 2 they damaged and promised to finish them off with Mavericks. Johnny Alexander was the flight lead of Marlin, and as he left, he informed me that the 23 millimeter is pretty heavy at times, but was out of range if we kept to the west of the targets. I thanked him for the information, and taking his advice, set up an orbit offset from the targets to the west. I rolled in first with an IR Maverick called up in a narrow field of view. Flew the 150 millimeter Pipper over the target tank, stabilized the missile in space by holding down the missile track button, and quickly looked inside the cockpit at the video screen. I could clearly see, magnified in the screen, the outline of a hot tank against a colder sand revetment. With my left index finger, I slewed the secret to the right slightly to ensure it was just over the tank, and I released the track button to command lock-on. The symbology in the screen indicated a good lock-on to the tank itself, so I looked back out the HUD and depressed the launch button on the stick. As was typical with the Maverick, it seemed like a couple of seconds passed before the freight train went by. The missile then screamed towards the target, trailing long flame and white smoke. I immediately turned away from the target and made a climbing left turn back to the west. As I climbed and looked out the right side, both for any threats coming up and to see the impact of the missile, the Maverick found the target and the tank immediately exploded and began to burn. It was thick black smoke rising from the shooting flames. Next it was Jay's turn, and he followed suit, leaving the other tank in flames. As I was now almost at bingo, I directed Jay to rejoin to Wedge, and we headed south. During the 15-minute flight back across the border, I kept the flight maneuvering randomly as we scanned the sky and the ground around us for threats and for potential targets to report to the intel guys. Once south of the border, I rocked my wings in a large side-to-side fashion to signal Jay for a battle damage check. As he closed to within about 30 feet of me, I dipped my wings away from him as a signal for him to check me over. He further closed to within about 5 feet of my wingtip, and he climbed slightly to check over the top right of the aircraft. He then crossed below and slightly behind to scan the bottom of my jet just before he checked on the high on the left side. As he leveled off with me, I saw a big thumbs up from him indicating all appeared normal with my aircraft. I then made a pointing motion forward and held up 2 fingers indicating he was to pull ahead and take the lead. His head made an exaggerated nod as he passed, and I began checking him over. When I was satisfied that he had not picked up any battle damage, I gave him a thumbs up, and he passed the lead back to me. I then passed him, pulsed the stick back and forth to porpoise the nose of my aircraft as a signal for him to go to wedge formation. I then checked in with Cougar again, passed on our battle damage assessment of 2 tanks destroyed. Once south of the border, I flew a predictable flight path directly towards El Juf. One of the other A-10 flights from El Juf was going north as we came out, so I briefed them over our common VHF frequency as to weather, threats, and targets. During the remaining 30-minute flight, I replayed the events of the first target over my mind several times. I could see the bomb was impacting in the revetment, and yet there were no secondary explosions. Perhaps that one wasn't fueled, I thought, but what about oil and hydraulic fluid? Of course, the CBU-57 bomb was pretty small, and it would take a direct hit on a critical area to cause a fire, I reasoned. Maybe we would get another chance, I hoped. 20 minutes later, with the single runway and a few buildings of El Juf in sight, I thanked Cougar for the help, checked in with the El Juf Tower. They cleared us for the now standard 90-degree to initial entry to the overhead landing pattern, so I directed Jay to line abreast on the left side and started a descent to 500 feet above the desert floor. As Jay pulled up alongside and a mile off my left wing, I radioed I was pushing it up as I put the throttles forward to the stop, then inched them back slightly so Jay would have a little power advantage. I then aimed directly at the control tower. The goal for what had become the standard arrival show after a combat mission at AJ was to level out at 500 feet with the maximum speed possible. Just prior to crossing over the top of the tower and pitching up to about 1,500 feet right downwind for landing, I noted my speed at 415 as we roared over the tower in line and simultaneously pulled up into a bone-jarring climbing right-handed turn. As I rolled out parallel and slightly offset to the runway, I yanked the throttles back and put the speed brakes out halfway to slow to gear extension speed. With the airspeed rapidly falling, I fed in back trim to remain at 1,500 feet above the ground and passing 200 knots, lowered the landing gear and the wing flaps, and started a descending right-hand turn to the runway as I pushed the throttles up to hold 160 knots. Rolling out to align with the runway, I slowed to 150 and aimed for the end of the runway. Once over the concrete, I flared slightly, touched down gently, and put the speed brakes out fully, holding the nose off the runway until 100 knots. Then I lowered the nose, touched the brakes to ensure they worked, and then rolled out to the end to be de-armed. On the way back to the parking spur at the end of the runway, we stopped in the hot pits for gas. Here, with the engine still running, we were both pumped full of gas from 2 separate pumps connected to huge bladders, which were partially buried in the sand beside the taxiway. After the 10-minute fueling, during which time I munched on some raisins and peanuts, which my mom had sent me in a care package. She called them fuel, energy fuel, I think she called them. We returned to the parking area, and with the engine still running, the Army crews swarmed over our aircraft to replace the Mavericks, CBUs, bullets, chaff, and flares. As they did this, one of the intel guys arrived and plugged his headset into my intercom system. He took my debrief of the mission events and briefed me on the next targets. He indicated that other flights were adequately covering Scud Alley, so we were free to concentrate on New Kaib, and if we wished, could take another crack at the fitter. Within 45 minutes of landing, Jay and I were airborne again and heading north on my last combat mission out of El Juf. A repeat performance of our previous mission, to the largest extent. All was uneventful. En route to the border, we talked to Cougar and to a couple of flights of A-10s who were headed home. They talked of continued activity in East TAC, increased AAA, some light surface artillery, and even occasional movement on the ground. Apparently, the boys in Scud Alley were even getting some actions as they had located and dispatched a couple of fuel trucks on the highway between Jordan and Baghdad. I was looking forward to good hunting as we coasted across the border and fenced in for bombs. I was heading to the airfield first for one last attempt at bagging the resistant fitter. Arriving at Mudiasis from the south, I gave the airfield defenses a wide berth, skirting to the east as we approached the revetted fitter. I turned on the VTR and immediately rolled in and put six CBU 58s onto the target. Again, it appeared to be a decent pass, but with no visible effect. Jay followed with his six cluster bombs, also a good pass, but to no avail. Now I was really frustrated. I really wanted to kill this target. The 23 millimeter started up again, but with no signs of anything bigger or any missiles. I decided one straight pass would be prudent enough. Determined to make it a good one, I carefully picked my run-in heading to eliminate any crosswind. I decided that I would begin firing at 10,000 feet and fire a 2 to 3 second burst while trying to keep a good aim point in order to get a lot of bullets in the revetment. As I rolled in, everything came together and it was looking like a really good pass. As I took aim and squeezed the trigger, I could almost feel the bullets heading to the target. As I recovered, Jay reported good hits. So as I rolled out of my climbing turn, I fully expected to see a large fire in the revetment. Again, I was disappointed. No secondaries. It was almost laughable. 2 sorties, 24 CBUs, 600 rounds of 30 millimeter, and no visible damage to this one aircraft. Jay was ahead and to the east as I passed through 10,000 feet. Without even thinking about it, I knew I was going to make another pass. In retrospect, this wasn't too smart, as it wasn't an important enough target to risk an A-10, let alone Jay or myself. But it was a quest now, and I just didn't want to give it up. I told Jay to keep pressing east towards East Tack. I didn't even tell him I was going to roll in again. I just whifferdilled over into a 30-degree dive, took aim, and started firing at 8,000 feet. Everything seemed to be moving in slow motion as I fired, subconsciously surprised at my impetuousness. After about 3-second bursts, I pulled and jinked, climbing to the east after Jay. He had turned to the north to cover me as I egressed from the first pass and had undoubtedly seen me roll in and shoot. Suddenly he called out, "It's hit! It's starting to burn!" I looked over my right shoulder as I climbed and saw the first wisp of black smoke rising from the revetment. The quest was over, and although excited to see the target finally destroyed, I was feeling pretty embarrassed about the whole thing. Realization that it was a dumb stunt sinking in. I turned off the VTR and vowed to save the tape as motivation to not be so stupid again. Arriving at East Tack, we found Marlin flight finishing up dropping bombs in what they thought was the command post for the regiment. Another flight just arriving from the south. Since we were fat on gas, I had a good handle on where the live targets were. I said I would hold high and dry while the other flight employed. I put Jay into a big loose wheel and climbed up to 20,000 feet to save gas. As we watched the show below us, Cougar called for Marlin. After 2 more calls, I piped up and informed Cougar that Marlin had departed the target area approximately 15 minutes ago. Cougar replied that they had a low, slow contact on the radar bearing 060 degrees for 27 nautical miles. I immediately thought helicopter and told them that I had the gas to check it out. I sent Jay to wedge as I picked up a 060 heading and reached down to turn on the VTR. Over hot mic, I brought the tape up to date with what we were doing. My excitement grew over the prospect of engaging a helicopter in an air-to-air combat. And I directed Jay to cool down his AIM-9 missiles seeker heads as I reached down on the weapons panel to turn my AIM-9 switch to the cool position. This sent supercooled argon gas to the seeker in order to make it more sensitive to hot objects. As I started a steep descent, I started thinking about where the vector was taking us, 30 miles further northeast than A-10s usually work, close to the heavily defended city of Karbala. Something just didn't seem right to me. I knew that there were F-15 caps over Baghdad. Why don't they check out this contact, I wondered. Thinking that Cougar might have given me Marlin's vector based upon Marlin's position on the radar, at least 30 miles south of East Tack, I queried Cougar. Cougar, confirm you have positive radar contact on Springfield 27 and 060's vector. I was answered by only a long silence. Then, Springfield was the only reply. After another long pause, which told me that my suspicion was right, they were finding me on the radar. Okay, 27, look 280 for 2 was the frenzied response I finally got. 280 for 2, I thought, my adrenaline pumping even faster. I'm right on top of him. I pulled my jet into a left slice back maneuver, which would get me heading the other way while rapidly losing altitude after noting Jay's position in a deep, high wedge. I methodically began searching the desert below. Unfortunately, my maneuver into Jay left him pretty much out of the fight, as he had to go high and to the outside of my slice back to both avoid and keep sight of me. As I rolled out of the turn to a southerly heading at approximately 12,000 feet and shallowed my descent, still searching at about 10,000 feet, I radioed Cougar again. Cougar, Springfield, update. Springfield, contacts faded, was the reply. At the instant that Cougar told me the contact had faded, I saw some movement out of the corner of my eye. Looking more closely, I saw a dark object moving quickly across the desert floor in a cloud of dust. Instantly, my heart went into overtime and my mouth went dry. It was a large helicopter, an Mi-8 HIP, or a Puma, flying northeast at a high rate of speed. Simultaneously, I told Cougar I was rolling in, and I sliced toward the helicopter and began pulling the gun cross toward it. As I rolled out, I told Jay on FM what I saw. One's in off my nose, across the road there, I babbled excitedly. Beware that AAA, it still might be there, he admonished, referring to the heavy AAA that had been reported north of New Kaib. Roger, I replied, fully aware of it since I had been shot at furiously at the same area 2 days before by 23, 37, and 57 millimeter anti-aircraft artillery. Things were happening fast. The helicopter moving quickly across my canopy, the altimeter unwinding and approaching 8,000 feet, and the potential threat all distracting me as I settled the gun cross out in front of the target. No friendly helos in this area, I thought. What about the AIM-9? No, it's a good gunshot. But still, I slew the AIM-9 and tried to lock it onto the target. It initially, the tone went off. It was a good tone. It definitely saw the heat of the engines, but it bounced off. It just wouldn't lock on. The desert floor was as hot as the engine exhaust. It was noon. The sun was high, and the desert gets hot. I can see it pretty good now. Pull the trigger. As my heart pounded in my chest, all these thoughts surged through my mind. I was pulling the trigger. The gun was firing, but it seemed distant. Suddenly, the distortion of time and space stopped, and I fully realized what was happening. The altitude in the HUD was rapidly passing 5,000 feet as I came off the trigger and pulled and jinked to the right, away from the big guns. Looks like the second half of the burst got it, Jay reported, as I jinked for all I was worth. As I reached 8,000 feet in the climbing, jinking turn, I looked for Jay. He was still pretty high and about 2 miles northwest of me. I quickly asked Cougar if he had any further contact, to which he answered negative. I then told him I had found what he had. I told him I had found what he had as I got my first look at the target since rolling in and pulling the trigger. Through the smoke and dust, it appeared to still be intact and flying, although more slowly than before. Was it a helicopter, Jay asked? Yeah, it's a medium-sized transport type, I answered curtly, realizing I needed to attack again quickly before it got behind a battery of 23 millimeter guns whose revetments and muzzle flashes I could clearly see from my low altitude. I rolled in again from 8,000 feet. Once back in, I transmitted, last pass, I added, perhaps to ensure I didn't repeat my kill the target at all costs performance with the fitter. Two's cover. As I rolled in again, I was keenly aware of my low altitude and proximity to the threat. I rolled out quickly and took aim, leading the helicopter more than the last pass. I squeezed the trigger again and let it fly through the bullets. Through the gun gases and smoke, I could actually see the movement of the target in relationship to the bullets. Then I realized, as the ground was coming up fast, I was getting really low. As I took in the altitude readout from the HUD, the gun suddenly stopped. Did I let off the trigger? I briefly wondered. Recover, 4,000 feet. Again, I pulled hard and rolled to the right, jinking as I climbed. My lungs were straining to pull in enough air as I labored to breathe under the G-forces, which pulled at every part of me. I climbed away to the west, twisting and slipping my jet through the sky, with 23 millimeter airbursts trailing behind. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Jay proclaim, "Great hits." Above 8,000 feet, I eased off the G and looked over my shoulder at the target. It was gone. It's in its place was a ball of flame and thick black smoke. Many emotions went through me at that instant: excitement, pain, fear, relief, pride, all at once. It was a great moment. Unfortunately, I couldn't come up with anything momentous to say. Through the still labored breathing of my adrenaline surge, I recorded for posterity on my VTR, "Well, it's burning now." I directed Jay to wedge and pointed my nose southwest. I continued my twisting climb, moving the aircraft every few seconds as I caught my breath and called Cougar to pass the battle damage. Cougar, we found a medium-sized transport helicopter moving across the road, and it's been destroyed. The flight back to Al Juf seemed to take an eternity. Jay was more excited than I was. He congratulated me several times, but I wasn't very talkative. I did realize why the gun stopped firing so abruptly, however. When I safed it up, I had found that the cockpit counter read 0000. I had emptied it. I was very tired, spent physically, mentally, and emotionally. Approaching AJ, however, the realization of what had happened began to sink in. I had just become only the second A-10 pilot in history to score an air-to-air kill, shot down another aircraft. Again, I was excited. Not a bad into my AJ tour, I thought. And to think, just 7 hours ago, I was feeling sorry for myself because I wasn't scheduled to fly. So I get a little emotional at this. It's it's a big day. It, it's I don't know why it's so much about really, but it was just it's a neat thing. Just it was such a chance thing, and and it kind of set up a little bit the rest of my career, and it's opened up a lot of doors and a lot of neat things over the years, and I don't know, getting old now, I guess, getting emotional about things. So we put on a pretty good arrival show. 425 over the tower, a big pull up to downwind, and a good landing. Words sped fast on the ground, and I had my moment in the sun. It was great. I debriefed Intel and everyone else, and then got my stuff together for the trip back to FOD. Sparky and I took some hero pictures in front of our jets before we left, and I basked in my newfound celebrity status for a few minutes before getting back in the jet for our flight home. It was a beautiful sky that we flew through and a peaceful desert below us as we made our way back across Saudi Arabia. Although tired, I was feeling pretty good. It was calm and silent. We weren't going north, so I had the threat warning frequency turned off. Unfortunately, the peace was broken by the shrill, piercing sound of an electronic locator tone on the UHF ground frequency or guard frequency. Someone had jumped out of a jet, and the automatic warning device built into the ejection seat had been activated. Instinctively, I wanted to in on the SAR, the search and rescue. I didn't have the gas for it, and besides, I was likely quite far away from the crash site. I was sure the guy would have more help than he needed anyway. Back at FOD, there were no fancy arrival shows with 144 A-10s at one base. It was a much too busy place for that. On the ground, again, word spread fast of my luck over New Kaib, and I was the center of attention for about 30 minutes. Right up until we learned the ELT on the guard belonged to an A-10. Not only did we lose Dale's store, but his flight lead, Steve Phillips, had also been shot down while running the SAR. Dale was captured by the guys he'd been bombing the minute he uh, the minute he hit the ground. Steve never made it out of his Warthog. He rode it in. That's the thing about war. It's not glorious. It's not just about targets destroyed, arrival shows, and moments in the sun. Much more, it's about good men fighting and good men dying. It ain't no fun, and I hope I don't have to do it again. So that was my. Sorry, I get emotional about that, but it was quite a day, um, and it's amazing what you get used to. You get used to you get up in the morning and you go fly combat, and and you're not cavalier about it. I tried not to sound too shit hot in this article. I try to be as real as I could with it, but um, the it's a thing that, as I talked with Colonel Connor about on my first episode, man, we wanted to be in on it. It's funny that the Cajuns are running the El Juice show because this guy's, we'd heard rumors when we were back in England that they may need some more A-10s, and then we thought, well, Third Air Force commanders flew with us, and we get the vultures. And now the Cajuns are picked up, the reserve squadron. So, oh man, we were just demoralizing them. Then when we got the nod to come to go out to the desert about 3 weeks before the thing started, we were super excited, and it was a big effort to get us there, and uh, but you want to be there. It's like the Super Bowl. You don't want a war to happen, but if there's one, you want to be in on it. And so we felt really blessed to be able to go, and we had a great squadron, great leadership, and just a bunch of great guys, great maintainers, and guys like Scott and just a really just a tremendous group, and and so then he flew that first mission. I recounted that, and got a missile shot at me my first pass. Holy shit, what have I gotten us into? And you got to go do it again, but you get used to it. And in fact, they say kind of the first 10 missions are kind of the most critical. That's kind of what Red Flag's about, the big war games out at Nellis. Um, to get guys sort of that experience of those first 10 missions, really getting shot at, but pretty realistic stuff, big force packages, and and there are some threat simulators and things, so it's pretty realistic stuff. And um, but it's not the same as real combat. And uh, but uh, but those but by the time I'm out of Al Juf here, I'm pretty seasoned combat guy, I guess, and feeling pretty confident about things. And even though I've been hit a few days earlier, as I said, I think in a muffled way earlier, I'll recount that in this article, the only thing that's not accurate is that it was not just a gun malfunction that had caused the problems with my jet a few days earlier. It was actually I got hit by 37 millimeter up under the nose. It chewed up some of the gun gears, spit them out the left side of the fuselage, sucked them down the left engine, and the thing got me home. I actually got the opportunity to talk to the workers at the GE plant New York that built these engines, and tell them that story about how great great engine they built. Because the engine was trashed. It didn't fly again. It was replaced. They flew another one out there, replaced it, but the gun was damaged beyond repair and couldn't replace it out at Aljuf. So that's why I couldn't fly an airplane again. But except home. But and then so then you're laying there and you're kind of sad because you're not going flying to combat that morning, and and you know. And then all of a sudden you're going, and you're going with a new guy from a different squadron. Man, I would have loved to have Sparky with me on this mission because he's with me on 36 of my 40 missions. Sparky was my number 2 guy, and so it's a little weird to have this sort of big mission, and or just Sparky wasn't there, but he was super excited for me, and all, and then yeah, it was cool. It was it was and it was just it was one of those things. It's just the right place, right time, and uh, AWACS, I wouldn't have seen the thing without AWACS radar. Radar in the A-10. It's interesting that the AIM-9s. Um, we had a word limit on this article and for the debrief book, and so I sort of ad libbed in there the bit about the AIM-9s, whatever. I really rolled in with thinking I'm going to shoot a missile at the thing, and I had tried several attempts to slew the AIM-9 seeker onto that target and lock it on, and I'd get the tone. It's a growling tone and this sort of high pitched tone of the heat, but it would just bounce off. It reminded me of the whole Vietnam movies where the first missiles weren't very accurate, weren't very good at all. Let them go stupid and stuff, and so they wouldn't lock on. And thing you see the symbology bouncing off the thing, it wouldn't lock, and it was kind of like that. And it's just the desert floor was hotter than the exhaust of the helicopters at noon. Uh, you know, uh, and so then it's just like a fast truck moving down the road. And there's the A10A back in those days. It did not have. We did get some improvements later. Low altitude safety and targeting enhancements as well. LASTI. This is not an A10C. It was just an improvement to the A. That gave us radar altimeter. It gave us a continuously computed impact point. It was called Death Dot, like the F-16 had for bombing. And it gave us a lead computing gun sight. It's kind of a funnel that snakes through that's where your bullets are going to go. And so for air to air, that's a tremendous advantage. But we did not have that in combat. We just had the gun cross, just an iron sight, depressible mills, and you just aim in front of the thing, but a little bit of lead, just kind of TLAR it. That looks about right. And so it's moving faster than a truck, obviously. So I just didn't take enough lead the first pass, but it hit in the tail section. But we're shooting mostly high explosive or mostly armor piercing incendiary rounds. We had what we call a party mix, which is 5 to 1. So we had 5 armor piercing incendiary to 1 high explosive incendiary. The armor piercing, of course, is designed for targets like tanks and armored personnel carriers. Depleted uranium slug in the thing. It actually melts through the armor, just actually punches a hole through it. Um, and then the high explosive incendiary rounds are for soft targets. So if like an air-to-air configuration would be all HEI. So that when it hits that aluminum skim, it explodes kind of like a hand grenade. But with a mostly armor-piercing incendiary, if you don't hit, fuel, the rotor system, the engines, or the operator, you're going to make a hole about this side, big on one side, big on the other side, right through. So I hit the tail boom of it, just didn't lead quite enough, and it was clearly slowing. It was very low. It was right over the desert, and but it kind of had a big dust trail with it. So maybe some smoke. Jay thought, but he said it looks like the last part of the burst got it. But uh, then I led it a little bit better. And the second pass it blew up real good, so it was cool. But it actually is actually uh, I did hear some years later. I heard, I can't remember through what source, but it might have been a couple years later. I was at the fighter helicopter conference in England, um, and I gave a talk there about fast jets versus helicopters, and so I think it was there. It was a special ops guy, a British SAS guy. They were actually they had eyes on this thing. They were somewhere just near an archive there, and they see he reported it was just big fireballs, just things fireball rolling across the desert. So it's cool because I'm jinking for North because I got really low, and that's the other thing too. It's interesting that Su-7 fitter is like this target just wouldn't die, and it's just fighter. First of all, it's a fairly old fighter. It's towed up past the airfield. They're not flying that thing. It's not a threat to us. But you should get your fangs through the floor. This kind of thing on some of these targets, and and you just want to kill the thing. And it got a little silly, really, but it's interesting. And it's cool too that that the thing burned for a long time. It had big huge black smoke trail. There wasn't a lot of wind that day, so there's this big black smoke going up in the sky from that one revetment after we put all that ordnance on it. This is crazy, but so uh, it certainly was when I called the JAS making one's back at last pass on that helicopter. Is I was just thinking that's kind of a dumb stunt, making that last guns pass. It worked, but it's silly, really. But I wasn't going to do that again. I said, if I'm not going to do that again, I might make 3 passes on this thing, get one more shot. And but I was pretty low too, and but again, you get your flanks through the floor, and I was hammering down that gun for all it's worth. Much longest burst I've ever fired, and so in those 4 gun passes, a couple at the fitter, and then the 2 at the helicopter. I emptied the gun, 1,170 rounds. The thing, and I was on another podcast talking about this and with some guys, and actually we were it was on Movers. DCS, the simulator thing, fight for honors, the air-to-air combat, guys all over the world, raising money for Folds of Honor, and so they had for the finals. They had this sort of a panel of commentary. We just talking shit, talking trash and with each other and stuff, and evaluating these air-to-air engagements of this DCS, was pretty realistic stuff, and this one guy Deuce is an F-16 guy. I think he's flying F-35s now, guard. But anyway, Deuce, his weapons officer, and he said something about, well, how many rounds? How many rounds she's a helicopter? I said all of them. I said, yeah, rounds still left in the gun when you come home without an air kill aren't much good to you. So I did empty the gun. It's cool. I actually took a picture. It'll be in the book of the counter. It's 0, 0, 0, 0. Empty that thing. But but then it says any shot at a helicopter. It's just a rare thing. There's nothing flying during the day. I mean, after the first couple of days of war, there's nothing flying during the day, and so you think it's a very unusual situation where you see anything, any enemy aircraft flying, and especially helicopters. So, but as the guys were saying, the flight previously had, they think they found the command element there and put some ordnance on it, and so I found out 4 years later, actually, no, it's 5 years later, 5 years after this date, now back in Oklahoma, on the Air Force, and I had a buddy that owns a car dealership, El Reno City near here. Buddy I went to college with, and he had there was I can't remember what the deal was. There was there, they knew he had a customer, somebody that knew that they knew some common people, and the customer had been at Tinker, an AWACS controller, and uh, uh, I remember this story now. This guy had been an AWACS controller at Tinker, got out of the Air Force, and was selling cars for my buddy out in El Reno. And I called him. I called my buddy, and so they paged Lane, the owner, over the system there in the dealership, and they said Lane Diffie, Todd Sheehy on the line for you, and so this fairly new salesman says after the thing, of course, hey, yeah, his name's Sheehy. He said, see, he got any relatives, somebody who's in the Air Force? And Lane said, well, he was in the Air Force, a fire pilot. The guy says, oh, okay. I was on the AWACS that vectored him to the helicopter he shut down. So how was as cool as that? So I had to talk to that guy. He was one of the weapons controllers on that AWACS. So that was kind of neat. And then he told me, so he makes some mention in that phone call. He made some mention to like, well, so it's an important target. And I said, oh, it's not that important. Just the helicopter. He said, you know who was on that helicopter, right? I said, no. The Muhammad Husseini Al Takrit, 4-star general, first cousin of Saddam Hussein, was on that helicopter. So he blew up really good, by the way. So so it was a high value target. So what they're apparently doing is retrograding the command element away from the place. They weren't going to get lunch for them. They're getting those guys out of there because we were whipping up on them. And we had found that target, a whole bunch of tanks. A couple of days earlier, I'd been on a search and rescue with Colonel Efferson and Groth Wilson. I just landed from a flight with Sparky, and Groth comes up and says, Shanghai, you're SAR qualified, right? And I said, so I've had Sandy training as a forward air controller in OA-10s. And he says, you're going on SAR with me and Colonel F. So there's 2 Tornado pilots, Tornado's got 2 guys in it, so a pilot and a backseater. tornado had been shot down up near Baghdad, and so we're going to go up to see if we can get those guys because the back seater come up on the radio. They had 2 good shoots out of the thing. Turns out the front seater had gotten picked up pretty soon after he landed, and they had a little sequence ejection, a little delay. I think they end up away from each other. And the number 2 guy, the back seater, he had evaded towards a highway. And it's hard to find a hole to dig into in the desert in the middle of the day. And this is right on the outskirts of Baghdad. I mean, so the city's right there. And he had kind of hidden by the side of a highway, and when he saw a vehicle come, a truck that didn't look military, he flagged it down. It wasn't military, but the guy turned him in at the next truck stop anyway, POW. But we'd gone up to get these guys because there was good radio contact, and so we breached this whole thing up. It was the British SAS was there at Al Juf, a little component, and we got a tanker and pave low or something like that, and up we go, to find these guys. And so we went up. I think the A-10s may be closest to Baghdad. It's eerie because it's the middle of the day and they're right there. The radar warning she was melting down with threats, and they got a couple MiG-25s scrambled off a base, and F-15s go roaring overhead. F-15 camp up there is cool, but unfortunately we never made contact with those guys. Just too long to get up there, and this is the middle of the day. It's hard to hide in the desert. So, but it's close to Baghdad. So, but of course those guys were repatriated, after the thing. So, but so it was a failed SAR attempt. But as we were coming back south, we ended up a little bit further east because of hitting a tanker on the way back, and we were pretty low on gas. The tanker actually came into Iraq to fuel us. So. Southern Iraq, but so that a more easterly vector to the tanker took us over this area of Nukaib, and because it's on the east side of what we call East Tac, which is the name we use for an area of that southwestern Saudi Arabia. It's named after a range out at Tucson, the Barry Goldwater Range. There's a range called East Tactical Range. So we just named it that. So we had Scud Alley, which is a primary thing. The whole thing about Al Juf was once the Iraqis started lobbing Scuds toward Tel Aviv, Israel, the president directed that the primary mission of the A-10's got to be to go out there and Scud hunt, because you can't have Israel getting into the thing, because I think now Saudi Arabia does recognize Israel, but then they didn't. And so if Israel would have gotten into that war, they would have done it unilaterally, as they do. Remember, they bombed the nuclear facility in Iraq, 81, 82, something like that. Didn't tell anybody. Just flew F-16s over, bombed it, came home. Anyway, and Saddam Hussein was no idiot. He was trying to provoke Israel into the thing, knowing that might split the coalition. Because if Israel's playing, Saudi Arabia may kick us out. Like that. So the thing was, we got to stop that. So you just look at what the range of Scud is. There's Tel Aviv. You draw a circle and go. You got to be out there in Western Iraq somewhere. And this thing is a big, transport reactor launcher. It's a long flatbed and big missile, and so not that easy to hide. They're hiding them under Bedouin tents and under highway revetments and such, bridge overpasses and things. And it's not that many highways out there. There's a long one out to Jordan, and that's where they're bringing the fuel in and such. And so we got to find those things. Now the Scud equipment with the generators running under a Bedouin tent, we still see it with an IR missile, of course. But so we were beating those things up pretty good. But so that's what we're out there primarily doing. And so this area where these tanks were was really sort of a little bit off the grid there. It was just on the east end of what we were doing. But maybe we wouldn't have even found them, except our failed SAR in this easterly heading took us over. I'm out on the left wing of the 3 ship as we're coming home. And I'm down here. And there's this big sector operations center. Which is a big radar center. The Iraqis had one of the most formidable, comprehensive integrated air defense systems in the world. Baghdad was more heavily defended than Moscow with missiles, and so they had a system set up of border radars. That Colonel Connor leading the first A-10 flight ever in combat. Went way out to western. Out there, near where we were, way out to western Iraq. I think he told me they took off and went to King Khalid Military City to get gas, and they went out to Al Juf and got gas. We didn't really have the operation going at Al Juf then, and then the border radar attack. I think joint attack with the Apaches. So and all the way back home. So these border radars were the first line of defense of what's coming. Then these big sector centers, a big radar, big huge radar. and associated equipment buildings. And this was the area of Nukaib, a little village, really just mud huts and a couple of streets coming together. One coming up from going up towards Karbala, and the one going out west there towards Mudiasis and airfield, which is the furthest western fighter base. And so this is a little village. And but this big the sector operations center, of course, was destroyed in the first night. I mean, this big radar is just in tatters, and it's just amazing. This is weird, but all around it now are these revetments. I'm seeing all these. I'm just looking over there, seeing this big radar with all these holes in it and stuff. It's cool. And then all these craters around it. And then I'm looking and seeing all these revetments. What are all these revetments? There's tanks in there. Tanks, armed personnel carriers. And so reported that. We got back. I called. Growth was leading the thing. I called Growth's attention to it, and so we marked on a map and came back. And so then it was, it was like, we got all these tanks out there. I think probably what they've done is they brought this whole regiment out there, maybe bigger than a regiment in strength, actually, probably to sort of hide them. Because remember, General Schwarzkopf had it's a brilliant plan. So he gave all those briefings, right? They were all cool and stuff. And the media was just eating it up, right? And so they just fed them some information. They kind of leaked some information that we're going to do an amphibious assault and quake, because that's what we do. The Marines hit the beach, man. And so, but we weren't going to do that at all, of course. And so that sort of gave the Iraqis in Kuwait attention to it. They really fortified that the beach area. I mean, they had tanks dug up to the turret in the sand, pointing out at the water there in the Gulf. They had the landmines and all stuff on the beach, and so. But they maybe take the tanks out west, put them out in the middle of the desert, where it's kind of no man's land. It wasn't much. We were out there scud hunting the west. But you got Karbala, Baghdad, sort of further east and north there. So then the Kuwaiti-Iraq border. So it was kind of this area where wasn't going to be much going on because there wasn't much out there. And so maybe they were taking them out there to hide them, to maybe do an end around, a flanking maneuver or something. As we're storming the beach. So I don't know, but there are a bunch of them out there, and we whipped up on them. And so it just happened to be that they're retrograding the command element, helicopters taking them out, and old Shanghai gets a nod to shoot the thing down. So it's cool. But and so but it was just you had a little bit of temporal distortion there. It's just all these things because it's coming so fast. You think, okay, 060 for 27 miles or whatever. And so you're looking, it's just doing its general descent, and then all of a sudden it's right below you. When you're 15,000 feet, it's 2 miles from you. It's just below you. So you just roll and bird, pull down, and there it is. You start hammering away, and then I think then you realize you're getting a little low, and you're going to jink away from it. And in A10, it's a hot day. Even though it's wintertime, February. It's the airplane's heavy, and it's so sluggish, and when you do this kind of maneuvers, you pull a lot of G's, a lot of induced drag, the airplane gets slow, and so now you're trying to climb away. They're shooting at you, and you're not. Your ability to move is a little bit limited, and you got to move. Keep the airplane moving every couple seconds. It's really like if you think about a shotgun and the shooting skeet or shooting geese or something. You're flying across there. And you got to lead them a little bit, but as long as they're flying at sort of it's the same sort of altitude relatively, and this and not turning, they're a pretty predictable target. Just lead out in front of them, and there you go. They'll fly through your shot, right? Through your shotgun blast. So, so if you say that same duck, and now it's moving like this, it's going to be a little harder to hit. You don't know what elevation it's going to be at or whatever. So you keep this, we call it jinking. To keep the airplane moving like that makes it unpredictable to the gunners. A little hard to hit. So you want to be jinking like that away from them, and you want to extend so you get some distance from them, and you want to climb so you get some altitude, and you get your airspeed back, right? Well, you got this target though that's moving away from you. Now, it's not like I couldn't catch it in A10, but it's like I know what those 23 millimeter batteries are, and these are ZSU 23-4s. These are wheeled vehicles, 4 barrels, 100. They're 20 millimeter, shooting 100 rounds per second each barrel, and there's like 3 of those things at the edge of this village, and so they can hose you down with a lot of 20 millimeter to hurry, and so and they're radar guided as well, by the way, so quite a weapon, and so I know where those are because I've been shot at them a couple of times before, and this helicopter's now going to be passing them, so putting them between me and it, and so I didn't want it to get away, and so I didn't want to have to contend with those guys, so I didn't have the gas for that really, or it wouldn't have been as safe. So so even though I'm jinking away from it, I'm like, okay, I got to go back in. So you roll back in, and you realize you get down to 4,000 feet. Sorry, bosses. I think with 5,000 feet was our sort of our minimum altitude we were supposed to be at with the threat area. So I got lower than that, but I killed the helicopter. So kill's a kill. But then then you do want to say something like heroic, and I'm on the tape, and I'm gonna get this tape. Here's the thing. So I've got the VTR tape, okay? And it's in my storage. What I don't have is a VTR player. They're not easy to come by. If anyone knows of anyone that's got a VTR player or access to one, I asked Scott a couple of days ago, and he doesn't know of anybody, but they're probably not. I don't know. They're not using them anymore. Maybe there's some stuck somewhere. Where so I've seen some online. I think I get one for about $800. It's a lot, but um, I do have. I've got a bunch of VTR tapes actually. I've got uh, most of my weapons passes, and a bunch of squadrons weapons passes. But I obviously have the one with this kill on it. So VTR tape's a big. This looks like sort of VCR tape is much bigger. It's players made by Sony. If anybody knows of one I can borrow or buy, I'm a buyer because the only way I'm going to get this thing converted to to digital is have a VTR player. Um, that's what. So fundraiser. I'm always doing fundraisers here, right? And by the way, I want to say thanks to the folks that helped out with the Phoenix House for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Had a great Christmas over there. A lot of man, it was cool. This year it really had a lot of donations. I mean, I'm really proud of the folks at Phoenix House. Proud of myself because I kind of led this venture, but to just it's kind of we have not because we ask not a lot. Really, especially in the nonprofit world, that it's nonprofit means nonprofit. It's a shoestring budget, man. And they get a little raise this year with inflation from the VA. That was good, but just barely kept up with inflation. And so the per diem, the amount of the contract facility there receives from the VA per bed night of guys is just barely enough to keep the place going. So keep them fed and housed and warm warm in the winter, and cool in the summer and such. So transportation, all that stuff, staff, the whole bit. But we are doing good on a fundraiser for the 10% skin in the game for our grant, by the way. And I will be, I think, I'm planning for first week of January. The city planner knows I'm coming to this desk and boom, here's the grant application, man. For I think we're looking at 150,000 now, and so we're raising that 15,000. We're doing well on that. So we'll have our 10% investment towards the $150,000 grant that the city will provide to us through their capital improvement budget and also community development block grant. I think some federal money there, but to completely remodel that place, upgrade the physical plant and such. So it's going to be awesome. But you guys, we had this year. I was saying is really did a great job. The board and folks of asking donations from corporations and things, and we had just a lot of cool stuff. I mean, all the guys got a bunch of stuff. I mean, clothing and backpacks and just goodies and stuff. It's cool. I mean, Christmas tree, a lot of stuff. So it's a great meal. It's really cool. And Thanksgiving is awesome. So I want to really thank the folks on this channel for really helping. I said this earlier. I'll say it again because I was muffled, I think. But Vicky Hauser, what a great person. Just a wonderful human being. A talented guitarist. Is a great, just the nicest person. I'm looking forward to meeting her in person one of these days. But she's our first mission commander, by the way. Boom, in our little membership program, and I'll put that in the link as well. We have 3 levels of membership on our channel. I'm not monetized yet by YouTube. I don't have enough views yet. We're getting there. Enough subscribers. I need 500 subscribers. I think we have 240 or something now. It's growing well for a little channel that has shitty technology and a bad host, but I appreciate everybody's support. We have some really cool, cool comments, and cool messages, and to me, words of encouragement and support. I appreciate that. Hopefully continue to entertain on the channel, get better. As I was saying earlier, tomorrow my son and I are going to go have lunch and go buy some technology, so that's going to be cool. We get this thing better. So, but Vicky's just been great, just a wonderful supporter and of the Phoenix House and things going on there and of the channel, and I really appreciate her. And Scott was in last week, and I was having technology problems again, of course, and didn't get out to see him. he was out at Will Rogers with his jet overnighting, and we're gonna have dinner and see the jet, but I didn't get to do that. We're gonna do it next time. But he's flying all around. I think he's flying from Dallas yesterday. So, what a great guy, great life. Just a super awesome guy. He's been a great supporter of the channel as well. So I particularly wanted to shout out to those two, but particularly Vicky. But for everybody that's supported the Phoenix House, really appreciate that. But now my fundraiser is going to be for me to get a VTR VTR player. So if you want to donate to the VTR fund, I'd like you to do that. 2 bigs full at YouTube or Venmo. But seriously, those things are going away. I saw like 3 of them on eBay or something. I think it was it, and I think the cheapest one was like $800. But this is old Sony player like we used to use. But I don't want that thing to get where I got the VCR tape. I can't play it. It's because that's the only record that I know of. I mean, it's on it somewhere in the archives of the Air Force, I guess. Because that tape, the copies of that tape had to go all over the place. I mean, it was a while before the kill was confirmed. Obviously, Wingman saw it. I saw it. We had tape of the thing, and then some SAS guys saw it too. But it takes a while. It was over a year before that was where the DFC. And the cool thing is too. This is back to the fitter. This is funny. Is that but the citation to accompany my distinguished flying cross reads that on that day I accounted for all enemy aircraft losses in theater. So it's cool. The fitter on the ground and the helicopter in the air. So it's kind of cool. Sounds more grandiose than it is. It looks good on the wall. But it's cool. But again, it's just one of those things about combat, and that's why I get emotional about it too. Is that thinking about growth. He's passed on. Was just a great leader, great guy, awesome fighter pilot. Just a fighter pilot. He's never made more than lieutenant colonel, I don't think, but didn't want to. Wanted to fly for 20 years, and he did. And he made a great contribution. Trained a lot of guys. It's just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And then you think of Shanghai had a good day, pretty cool, and got a hero for a while. It's neat. Everybody congratulating you, and it's cool. It's a big event, and which doesn't happen very often, of course. It's cool for the A10. I got a picture product. I got a thing up on my wall here. It says thing that made up afterwards. It's like the Iraqi flag. It's got a silhouette of a helicopter on the A10 coming in, and it says it's Hogs 2, Iraqi 0. And then we also did a thing for the F-16s, Hogs 2, F-16 0. So they got no air kills in that war. So they did in Bosnia later with AMRAAM, so it's cool. But we gave those guys shit too for that. So it was kind of cool. It was one of those cool A10 things, and if you're going to shoot something out of the gun, the Galway Avengers, they kind of go with. So it's neat. But then and you're flying home. It is just weird because you're not going to go into combat, but you had a good day of combat, and you're going to go back to FOD, and you're going to be a hero there too. It's not going to lie. It's a cool thing. It's cool. But then it's this time. So it's just surreal almost because you're flying across this desert and just up to your left is a war going on, but it's peaceful, it's silent. You don't have to have the enemy threat thing on. Sparky's out there. I took a couple pictures of his jet off there a mile from me. Got those. It's neat. And then the ELT goes off, and you distinctly like who you want to go in, get in on that, and just think, oh, you got a lot of help up there. And you get back to FOD. And it's a hero again for everybody's all excited. You got the maintenance guys out there. We're gonna paint the Iraqi flag on the jet, man. It's cool. I mean, they're just stenciling on there right there. Made the stencil and they're painted on there right there. It's cool. And then and everybody's congratulating you. And then you find out word gets around real fast that that aerial kill. It's cool. Then the word gets around real fast that 2 guys aren't coming home. Sweet man had gotten hit. I think by SA9s, like 2 of them. And Sif didn't see a shoot because he got hit. He's coming off the target. He was pretty low, and I guess he jet punched out. I think got like 1 swing in the chute and hit the dirt, and the guys are just around him with guns and hauling him off. So I mean, it's just like that. In fact, Dale, that was Dale. That was actually it's Dale's store. I think was who it was, but yeah, but And I think Dale's just retired. I think not too long ago. I think I saw it online. He retired. He was the only active duty POW left, and he retired. He had a great career, but he retired as a colonel. But then Sif, Steve Phillips, who was one of the most experienced A-10 guys there was, a weapons school instructor, been a weapons school instructor. He was the flight lead on that deal, and he of course going to try to tried to start up a SAR, and he got hit and rode the thing in. So they actually recovered his body sometime later after the conflict. But so it was a tough day. We thought we'd lost 2 guys, and we lost 1. But so I think the original title of this was going to be Thunderbolt, Triumph, and Tragedy. But I think that was the one thing the editor said is maybe we want to focus more on the triumph part of it, but leave it, a bit in there though. But because it's just a bittersweet day, it's the sort of the hero the hero moment of it is short lived because you find out the sort of reality of combat comes back very very quickly as you lost a couple guys, and so but that was tough. But then the thing goes on and you finish up and go home. But it's cool. This is another cool little sidebar. Is that it's Friday, of course, and so by the time it's Friday night at RF Falconberry in England, when the word gets back that Shanghai shot down a helicopter. And so it was a tradition was back in those days was to go to the officers club on Friday and have a little imbibement and some quality fellowship, and so maybe some songs, perhaps some crud. And so shenanigans that we did. But so the 509th Fighter Squadron back at Alphaberry did not go to war. So those guys are at the club with their significant others, and the 511th wives are at the club as well. Pat O'Connor will be there leading the charge, and my wife and Angela. And so the wing Do who's back there running the show, we're at combat. He pulls her out of the crowd. Something exciting happened today. Todd's okay, but shot down a helicopter. So what does she do? She goes in and rings the bell and buys a bar, just like she should. Shit hot. It's cool. Yeah. So it's kind of neat. It's good honor. But but it was neat. It's opened up a lot of doors for me afterwards. You just kind of get area kill guys, And again, it's just not a huge thing in the significance of the world, but in the A10 community kind of was, and so I got to go out to Fort Rucker. They set up a couple of simulators there to simulate A10s. And so me and another guy went out to Rucker for a couple weeks, and we fought Apaches with the simulators. It's cool. So those guys could get some tactics, and I think the simulators were rigged so they could shoot us down a lot. But stuff fighting an Apache, man. They're hiding behind the trees and popping up at you and stuff. We had a lot of fun with that. Learned a lot with those guys, and so it was a neat thing with a lot of sim time, and then a lot of debriefs and discussion of so they could form some tactics and we could too. Then I got to go. I got to before I left England. Queen Elizabeth II's fighter helicopter conference in London is cool, and so her son Prince Andrew was a Royal Navy helicopter pilot. He fought in the Falklands actually, and so he's sitting right there in the front row. Queen comes down. She's in my speech for about 5 minutes or whatever. But it's cool, man. There's the Queen of England right there, and yeah, big crowd, and I got to talk about the fast jets versus helicopters was a topic there. I don't know how fast they take us, but whatever. And then I had to brief the Joint Ordnance Commanders Conference in Monterey. I kind of took it upon myself to write an after action report of the A10s, the A10, just the effectiveness of the A10, some challenges we had, some tactics ideas and things that I pulled guys together on that. I was trying to put a bid to go to weapons school, which I did, and so that helped propel me there. And I got to go out to the Joint Ordnance Commanders Conference. These are flag ranked officers, and captain of giving a briefing, the whole slides and everything. It's cool. And just again about the effectiveness of the A10. So I kind of became sort of the spokesman for the effectiveness of the A10 in combat, and again, and it wouldn't have happened except for the notoriety of this one sortie. So it's pretty neat. And so now let's see, 91. I don't do a lot of math in public. It's about 33 years later almost, and still, still as far as we know, in the world, there's not been another air-to-air gun kill yet in history, and there's not many air-to-air kills at all anymore. It's not like World War II or even Vietnam, where there's just this huge air battles. We generally achieve air dominance pretty quickly, but and the targets are different now too. It's not these huge mass fighters, groups of things like cruise missiles and such that you see these guys, and I started talking about this earlier. Seen these videos out of Israel where their IAF F-35s and stuff are tracking TLAMs, cruise missiles like Tomahawks. I mean, they're not Tomahawks, but whatever they have, whatever the Houthis have, what Iran's giving them, but flying those things from Yemen, and these guys are tracking them uh, and destroying them. Probably with the AMRAAMs. But these things are low altitude. They're really fast. They're small, and they're shooting them down like that's cool. Very very cool technology. It's a game changer. But there's just not a lot of opportunities to to gauge somebody in aerial combat anymore. And so, in fact, as a result of that, there's something that's called the Fighter Aces Association, and not many aces left. There's only two World War II aces left, and one was turned 101 this year, and the other is 102. Um, and and then there's I think 7 Vietnam aces left alive. So the American Fighter Aces Association got pretty small, and so they reached out to the 42 of us that since Vietnam have shot down on our aircraft, and have offered us to have associate membership in the American Fighter Aces Association with just one kill. So that's really cool. So I was very honored for them to reach out to me and be inducted into that association. So keep that spirit going with those guys, and it'd be neat. It turns out that one of the aces from Vietnam, Steve Ritchie, the backseater, or no, it's Chuck DeBellevue's Ritchie's backseater, lives right in Edmond, Oklahoma, just a few miles from me here. So they're going to get me his contact information. I'll try to get him on for an interview. That'd be pretty awesome. But again, since Vietnam, there's only been 42 air kills. There haven't been any until Desert Storm, obviously, and so this was 33 years ago now. And so we had 36 there, and then there were a few of Bosnia that conflict. I think it was it. So that's for the U.S. Now. Worldwide, obviously, the Iraqis or the Ukrainians and the Russians have logged a few, but we haven't heard of any with guns. So there may have been some, every record's got to fall. But 33 years, pretty long run for something like that. So that's cool. I said, if I have claim to fame, so last air gun kill in the history of air combat, I still don't pay full price for coffee, but it's the thing there. So anyway, so that wraps up that. I will put a video together with some pictures and stuff. And then so let's talk about the memberships and channels. So donate that to causes like Phoenix House as well, and then use it for technology and things for the channels also. But and towards the book. But so I have 3 levels of membership, and I'm not monetized on YouTube yet. I need 500 subscribers to do that, and I think 4,000 views. I think I've got about 2,000 views, about halfway, about 240 members and subscribers, and about 2,000 views. So about halfway there. 6 weeks or so, it's not bad. But it's a lot more work than I thought. I'm not very good at it yet. But the thing is with that is once you get monetized, then there'll be some things like super chat. If you want your question answered, I'm going to go through those here in a second. But if you want your question answered, and there's a lot of questions, that'll get you priority, and so there's those kinds of things. But I'm not qualified for that yet. So what I've done is just sort of our own little membership thing, which is called it Shanghai Squadron, and so we got wingmen, flight leads, and mission commanders, and so for $8.10 a month, 8.10, like time 8.10, that will allow you to have the priority in the chat, and then also access to some special content. When I do an interview, we're going to do a little separate interview afterwards, just for our members, squadron members, and then there'll be some content in my hog pile. So I add stuff to the there's on your YouTubes there's a thing like videos, and I put stuff like hog in what I call hog pile, which is A10 stuff that's cool. I think it's cool, and I put that in there. Just for you to be able to view. But then I'll have a section of Hogpile that's my personal stuff, my personal pictures and memorabilia and things. They'll be getting those out of storage and adding those there. And those will be accessible to our members. And then for little savings of you pay annually $80.10 a year instead of $10.10 a month, then that will also get you a special edition of the book. So the book comes out. This is cool. I'm working on getting some 30 millimeter shell casings to practice rounds, and we'll get those melted down and make little plaques out of them. It'll be the special commemorative edition of the book, the first printing run, and so that the inside front cover will have this little plaque commemorating the book, and they'll be made out of 810 shell casings. That's kind of cool. And then also, then I'll personalize and sign that book for you if you'd like. And so that'll be part of your membership there. And for our mission commanders, which is $1 a day, $365, paid once annually, you will receive the book, of course, a special edition of the book. Uh, and then we'll also have, from time to time, like for instance, when we get the video up for this gutter camera film, those will be the first folks that will be able to see that. And we'll have a Zoom where we'll actually watch it together and be able to everybody that wants to can jump in there and we'll have a live Zoom with everybody and can talk about that. So those kind of things was some really special things that we'll release to those folks. And then also, if you look at the YouTube, the background picture, I think I might be able to put it up here. Let's see how you put it up. It's a picture. What I've got is of course I've talked about this before. I have the of course the original copy of Jeff Pleasance's depiction painting of my shoot down of the helicopter. It's called Mill Killer. That's what the aircraft's called now, to the name of the aircraft. So by the way, the nose art on 810964 was Steal Your Face, the Grateful Dead album cover for Steal Your Face. It was Colin Moffat's jet, one of the guys in the squadron. His name was on the side of the jet, and his crew chief would come with a Steal Your Face logo. It's cool. And I think I got a T-shirt of that. In fact, I found a couple years ago. It's cool. But and so that became my jet, of course, with the Iraqi flag painted on underneath the canopy rail during combat. And then after combat is ceased, then you take the enemy's flag off, and it becomes a green star on the left forward fuselage. And so 810964 is still flying. In fact, it was the East Coast demo jet for a couple of years. It's flying out of Moody Air Force Base now with the 74th Fighter Squadron Flying Tigers, and it's got that green star on it still. When it's retired, I believe arrangements have made it's going to come to Oklahoma City to the Science Museum of Oklahoma to be on display. That'll be awesome. It's A10C, but whatever. Maybe get it painted back up in the Alconbury 511 livery. There's a couple cool die casts of the aircraft as well. I'm trying to get a hold of one of them actually. They're hard to get, but that's kind of neat. But so Steal Your Face was the nose art on the airplane, so it's sometimes referred to as Steal Your Face. But it's now known as Mill Killer, MIL for the design group for the helicopters. It's called the MI8 is what we call the HIP helicopter, but the MIL is for the Milkovic or whatever it was, the designers of the aircraft. So it's a big little I and a big L, Mill Killer. That's the name of the airplane now. And so it just has a little green star with, I think, that says MI8 and the date on it in the middle of it. But that's what all the airplanes with air kills have. So so Mill Killer is the title of the painting that Jeff Pleasance did now. And so I have the original of that, of course. And I'll see if I can pull the picture up here. Let me see. I think I can do it right here. And go to no, I'd have to make a slide out. Okay, well, I'll put it up. I'll put it up in the link. But it is the background to the podcast. Whatever the video that's going to show up on the YouTube there is that painting. So what I'm going to do is get some prints of that painting, 100 of them. So it'll be a limited edition, 100 numbered and signed. I'll personalize those for you as well. So for our mission commanders, you will receive a print, full-size print of the painting of a Mill Killer by Jeff Pleasance, and it will be numbered and signed. There'll only be 100 of them, and so that'll be a pretty cool thing. It'll be a hot item. It's only one of those. I got the original, and I can make prints of it. So we're gonna do that in the book, and support the podcast, support some of the good veteran stuff going on around. So I always want to say we're gonna start a segment too called Momentarily Mental, where we'll talk about some mental health topics that are important to veterans, to anybody really. I've talked about some of my personal challenges with that over the years, and try not to be shy about that because we all have challenges, and there's always help out there. But get help. If you're in the military, there's a lot of great resources. If you're retired or a veteran or whatever, there's a lot of great resources to VA for mental health. I think the stigma towards mental health issues is becoming less significant, but it's still one. But shouldn't be. And I think by talking about it more, we maybe even break that stigma a little bit more. There's way too many veterans committing suicide. veterans struggling. There's a lot of resources out there for help. You just got to ask for it. As I said about like all this Christmas stuff for the vets at Phoenix House. We have not because we ask not. And so ask for help. There's people out there like Vicky, for instance, that is just so generous. Willing to to help out things that they believe in. And and there's just a lot of good organizations providing a lot of good resources to veterans. There just needs to be a lot more. There's a thing called a point in time count that cities all across America, homelessness groups and the veterans organizations go out and they actually try to count the homeless people in their communities. Now at the VA, they've got a whole homeless group of 3 full-time social work professionals. They got a walk-in office any day of the week. Walk in there if you're a homeless veteran and get help, immediately. But again, there's not enough of those resources. But they actually go out. Our folks go out in the community regularly to the homeless camps and things and try to identify the veterans and get them help. Not everybody wants help, of course, but want to make sure that people know the resources are there and they're ready. But at any given night in Oklahoma City, a city of about 500,000 people in the metro area, there's 1,700 homeless people. It's a lot. It's not Seattle or LA, a lot more. But 1,700 is a big chunk. If you're about 2,500 of those or 25% of those are veterans, and so I don't do a lot of math, but there's about 400 veterans that are homeless in Oklahoma City. We got about 85 beds for homeless veterans in Oklahoma City. So we need a lot more of that. I think it's neat that some of these small housing things that are coming out, like Elon Musk's foldable house, for instance, super awesome. But it's not gonna be enough of those for a while either. But those kind of things will make a big difference, I think. Get some of this sort of lesser used or disused land and make compounds of those things, and it'd be a really great thing for the homeless programs, homelessness issue. But as inflation continues, so homeless is becoming more and more a thing. I mean, the housing's getting expensive, and groceries, and everything else, and people are in despair. So, I really appreciate people's help with that. And so, the membership thing for our channel, help the channel, but also, we provide some help to those good causes also. So, appreciate some people who want to support that to do so. If you want to just make a donation to Phoenix House, again, Venmo or Cash App, or contact me. I had a guy that saw the channel, and he works for GE that made the A10 engine, for instance. His wife works for Raytheon. GE has a matching program with their donations, and so he sent a check. I don't know what it's for yet, but he sent a check to the Phoenix House. It probably arrived today. I think I wasn't there today, but personal from his family, and then GE is going to match that. So that's really cool. He did that. If you want to make a special contribution, want to use Venmo or Cash App or whatever, just contact me, and we'll come up with a way. So we did with him. They needed the EIN and stuff for the foundation, and we got him that, and GE's going to match that. So that's really cool. To leverage those kind of things. It's the end of the year. You want to think about your end of year giving for your taxes. Give it to a tax professional, and if you want to make a donation, we'll put it in the right place for you. So for sure. So appreciate that. Always you want to if you like the program, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends. Help me get that subscriptions up there. Didn't cost you anything to subscribe. And again, in the subscriptions, I'm not going to limit these Warthog Wednesdays or any of the stuff that we're doing now for our members. We're just going to do some extra stuff. So some extra things there, some bennies. So we're going to get some merch coming as well as we get this thing going. Some technology first, and some merch. Maybe a better host. We're going to get a producer, somebody that's going to help out, kind of screen in the chats and making sure technology works, and being able to put up pictures and that kind of stuff. I haven't figured out yet. So let's see. We're all looking good there. Let's see new comments. Let's see what we're doing with the comments here. See if we can answer a couple questions. VTR tapes are not compatible with VCRs because they use different tape formats. Right, exactly. Which is things. So yeah. So to take the VTR, and then when I've got a player for that, then I've contacted somebody here in Oklahoma City that does takes a tape to digital, and they'll be able to get that to a digital file for me. But nobody's got a VTR, so knows what that is. It's a big ass thing. Let's see. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I see. Yeah, what Zenos was referring to is some another comment the Rebel made about. Uh, yeah, it's a VTR, video tape recorder, not a video cassette recorder. It's a bigger tape with a bigger cartridge. It's a little more square. It's a little hard shell. And it's a bigger player. So it's yeah, yeah. Yeah, but Rebel's right. The VCRs are hard to find too. I know Dana at the Phoenix House, who runs Phoenix House. She's got this VCR that don't touch my VCR because I got some tapes that I haven't converted yet, and it's hard to get those. So, um, oh, Colin, yeah, okay, Colin, I'll talk to Colin. Colin O'Connor says he he put over he recorded over some stuff from his dad's from the 511. So of course Colin was probably dad was probably still in the Air Force. Colin had access to a VTR, but so. Um, and Rebel, I appreciate you, Rebel man. You make some really positive comments. It's awesome, man. You're a cool guy. Appreciate you. Um, see Scott's in the chat tonight. Scott's awesome. Let's see what's else. Yeah, Rebel, you're right. Yeah, we always want to remember the sacrifices of veterans for sure. I mean, um, and veterans families. It's just it's a tough life. I've got really good feedback from Pat O'Connor being on the program, um, and it was a really good chat. Pat's such a wonderful person. Was a great squadron first lady, and she tells it like it is. She's a great plain spoken lady, and I love her. She's not going to mince words about the challenges of veterans and the military now. Military's having tough times, tough recruiting times. I think the Marines were the only service that made the recruiting goals, and it's not money as much as quality of life. It's tough. It's a lot of deployments. The ops tempo's large. The threat's high, um, and uh, I think leadership's doing a good job of taking a look at all these factors and trying to improve things as much as they can. But boy, we had a great Air Force. I don't know who the new Air Force Chief of Staff is, or if there's one appointed yet. I know that we got held up by Tuberville in Congress for a while, but the CQ Brown went on to be the Chairman of Joint Chiefs. He was the last Air Force Chief of Staff that I was aware of, but he's a cool guy, man. Fighter pilot, and he's got some cool commercials. Check out CQ Brown's commercial. I think it was shortly after he became a Air Force Chief. He did a commercial. He's in a hangar. He's wearing BDUs on. He should have had a flight suit on, but anyways, he's in a hangar. It's kind of dark. And he says something to the effect of when I put on my helmet and strap it to my jet, you don't know if color of my skin or my national origin. All you know is I'm an American aviator coming to kick your ass. That's cool. That's a good guy, man. He's a cool guy. You know, like that. So I tell you, we wouldn't have had a Merrill McPeak say anything like that back in my day. We guys remember General McPeak. But anyway, so had some good leaders, and I think, but it's looking at the quality of life for military people is important thing, and to try to encourage young people to join the military. It says after World War II, everybody knew somebody was in the military, your uncle or your dad or whatever, the guy down the street. Uh, it waned over the years, and but by now it's like nobody knows anybody in the military. It's literally something like 3% of people know somebody personally that's been in the military. So as the military's got smaller, and it's just population's expanded, and it's just so it's a real privilege and honor to have served in the military. I encourage young people to look into it. But it's got to be calling. You got to want to serve your country. It's not about the money, not about a job skill. Um, if you want to be a pilot, it's awesome, but you don't know what you're going to fly. And so I look back on that too, and again, I get emotional about this. I just think about all the things that came together to put yourself in that cockpit at that point. It's just incalculable the numbers of just things that have come together right to put you there. And but you always get to pick and choose, of course, and but every job is important. I know at King Fod, been 144 A-10s. There's a thing about the Air Force too. Think about this. I think it's like 335,000 active duty Air Force members. Less than 1/2 of 1% that go into combat. You think about the Army and the combatants there, and Marines. A large percentage of their forces in combat. You think about sailors on ships. I'm not saying that being at King Fahd for anybody wasn't tough. I mean, Scud missiles going overhead, so you're in harm's way. If you're you're up there at JBAD or someplace like that up in Afghanistan. You These gates are getting stormed. So it's not that if you're not flying in combat, you're not in danger. I'm not saying that, but for the most part, most of the Air Force members are they're not direct combatants. They're not getting shot. I know for their daily meal, but so I didn't really think about this. So I was in the elevator at the VA one time, and there's a guy in there. The VA employees all wear lanyards, ID or whatever, and they usually have if they in the military they got a branch of services, the Air Force, whatever, on their lanyard. And this guy says wearing a suit. He's a good looking guy and an important guy, obviously a wheel there. And he's got the lanyard. It's got Air Force, got F-15s on. I was like, oh, like I wear my A-10 leather jacket with patches on it. So, and he says, I said, oh, I like your lanyards. He said, you have A-10s on it. So he said, you're a hog driver, right? Yeah. He said, oh, I was at Tucson. He said, my first time was at Tucson Security Police. And then he went to Eglin, and that's where the F-15, so security police. And then he went to back to Tucson, but with the Pima County Sheriffs. And then he got on with the VA, and he was the director of security for our VA Regional Medical Center. So a great guy. But he said, but he made this comment though. I said, boy, you had some great assignments. I said, you were in some nice locations for your assignments. He said, oh yeah, you gotta love the Air Force. He said, the bases are nice places, good golf courses, and the officers do all the fighting. I thought about that. That's kind of true. But a very small percentage of the officers do all the fighting in terms of flying up there and going in harm's way. So uh, it's but what I was saying though is that that, that's an interesting factoid. But at King Fahd, everybody on that base felt they were part of that great victory, and they were. I mean, we had 97% in service rates of those aircraft. This is better than any time in peacetime, better than OREs, readiness inspections, or surges or anything. 97% of aircraft ready to fly to combat at any given time. That's just phenomenal. I mean, guys, Scott Atwood and the boys, just doing God's work there to just keep those things going in austere environments with difficult, environmental conditions and everything else. To achieve that is amazing. The weapons loaders, the guys serving our chow, all that stuff. It's all super important. It's all part of what gets you to have victories like 42 days, in the desert, 100 hours on the ground against the third largest army in the world. With loss rates of like 0.000. I mean, who would have said? Who would have thought? Well, we're going to go fight the third largest army in the world in the desert. They're dug in for 6 months, and we're going to lose, whatever the handful of airplanes and handful of people is you don't want to lose anybody, of course. It's a tragedy, but man, in Vietnam, you mentioned the loss rates. Last race in Vietnam versus Desert Storm is it's unbelievable, and it's just a testament to the professionalism, the training, the quality of people. But you got to find more quality people to replace them. Scott Atwood's hard to find, um, so encourage young people to think about the military, but you got to want to go serve your country, and that's the thing. You got to want to serve your country, and what job you do is just part of that. I'm sure you got your dream sheet of things you want to go do, but you got to be willing to do any of it, and you got to be willing to. I think T-Bear, A10 guy, retired guy, he's a cop duster now, but he's been on Movers channel. He's a great guy. And T-Bear, I like the way T-Bear says that you got to be willing to write a check up to your life for your government, for your nation. If you're willing to do that, then think about the military. If you just want to go be a fighter pilot or go get the GI Bill or whatever, you're not the person for it. But you're willing to sacrifice for your country because it's a great place. You want to preserve for the next generations, and the military is a great thing. So, with that, I will sign off. Thanks everybody for putting up with the technology again. Hopefully by next week we'll have some super cool professional stuff. So, love you all. You're all great. Hope you had a great Christmas, and look forward to a Happy New Year. So, see ya.